Thank you, Pastor Robert, and thank you, Clifton United Methodist Church, and thanks to all the justice seekers in the world. And for those of you who are trying to figure out if you're a justice seeker, if you're asking that question, you may be. But anyway, it is an honor and a privilege to be here. Now, let me do a couple things up front. I don't think you're one of those churches, but there's always at least one person who likes to time the sermon. I'll let you know when to start the clock, okay? I'm not there yet. I got to settle into the space. You're here all the time. I'm not. I need to settle into the space. So let me start by saying, Pastor Robert, thank you so much for your leadership and for your connection through the years. Now, what he left out of what he shared with you was that back when I became superintendent back in 2008, one of the first, can we call it a joy or just an experience? We'll call it an experience for now, but one of my first experiences as a new superintendent is you go along with your predecessor, the person you're following or whatever, to, just kind of see what's going on in the district and check out the churches and see about structure. Well, I served in the district, so I knew those things, but there were some things I didn't know. I didn't know how to be a superintendent. So one of the things you have to do as a district superintendent is you have to introduce new pastors to their new congregations. And God would orchestrate it in such a way that the very first introductory meeting that I got to sit in on was for this guy as the associate at Santa Monica United Methodist Church. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in this little library room up on the second floor. He was nervous, they were nervous. The superintendent was just glad somebody was there to take his job, I guess. But that was the one and only introductory experience that I had alongside then Superintendent Grant Hagia, who became Bishop Grant Hagia, and I'm grateful to have continued on that journey with Pastor Robert and as he served faithfully there at Santa Monica First United Methodist Church. And one of their requests in that meeting that they just kept reiterating is we want a long-term associate. We don't want somebody here for a year or two and you're just going to take them away. We want a long-term associate. We are looking at him, we see that he's young and he's smart and he's sharp, and we know those are the people that you just take and you move around, but we want a long-term associate. And we're like, you can have him. And so he stayed there until you called for him. And so, but very faithful pastoral leader, so thank you. And then I see a longtime colleague and friend, David Meredith here. I have to give honor where honor is due. Like I stand in this space today as your Bishop Talbert recipient because of the life, the work of David Meredith. I know that to be the case. I stand in the office of Bishop in the United Methodist Church because of the work, the labor, the sacrifice, and the witness of David Meredith and so many others who have labored without fail. So I don't stand in this space or occupy this office on my own, nor do I do so for myself. But I find that it's for those who were told no, for those who dared not even dream of the possibility, but also for those young people who are sitting now trying to figure out what will come of them in their life, in their work, in their ministry. And my hope is that standing in the balance, that those who have labored for a day like today can see that their labor was not in vain. And for those young ones, they can look and see that there is hope, possibility, and a place for them. So thank you, Clifton, for helping us bridge that divide, for helping us provide that hope, and for shining a light on the possibilities that are before all of us. So when you see me coming, or you hear me talking somewhere, please know that I'm just about bridging that gap, holding that space. I'm doing my work while I'm doing it, though, but holding that space so that we don't lose sight of what is possible. Amen? Amen? Amen. Now, you can wind your clock in a couple minutes. I got a couple more things to do. I want to acknowledge the presence of my wonderful spouse, Mr. Christopher Hux Ortiz. Amen? I tell you, the man for the moment. Oh, I tell you, the man for the moment. Thank you so much. All right, now you can start your clock. This is really a full circle moment for me. For people who have known me for a long time, they know that I'm always looking for those full circle moments. You know, where something that happened way back there just comes back around, or you see how it all fits. Am I the only one? Yeah, I mean, I live for these full circle moments. And Clifton, you have gifted me with a full circle moment right here in 2024, and you didn't even know you were doing it, but you did. And let me draw the circle for the circle is not a part of my minutes, okay? So let me draw the circle for you. Way back in the day, Reverend Melvin Talbert was appointed superintendent in what became the California Pacific Annual Conference. And at the time, he was the youngest person in the church to have been named a district superintendent. That was in CalPAC. He went on and did, Board of Evangelism. That became the Board of Discipleship. And then he got elected a bishop, consecrated, and was assigned to serve as bishop in the Pacific Northwest Conference. While he was serving as bishop in the Pacific Northwest Conference, he called Reverend Mary Ann Swenson to serve on his cabinet as a district superintendent. And when she was called to that role, she was the youngest superintendent called to serve as a district superintendent. And she went on to get elected a bishop. And when she was elected bishop, she was the youngest person ever consecrated as a bishop in the United Methodist Church. And she left the Pacific Northwest. She went to serve in Denver, and then eventually came to serve as the bishop of the California Pacific Annual Conference. And in 2008, she invited me to lunch to have a conversation. I thought she was calling to have a conversation about that little situation that had happened at my church, that had sort of gotten out of hand, but turns out she didn't know anything about that. But instead, the conversation was to invite me to serve as a district superintendent in her cabinet. And that year, I was the youngest superintendent assigned. And then fast forward to November 2022, and I was elected bishop, and my assignment was to the Greater Northwest Episcopal area, which includes the Pacific Northwest Annual Conference. Full circle. And it keeps going, because when Christopher and I planned to travel to Nashville for Bishop Talbert's memorial service in September of last year, we were told we needed to wear white stoles, and I was like, I was afraid of that because I didn't have a nice white stole. It wasn't nice, I just didn't have one. So it's last minute. I just ordered one online. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. I just ordered it. It came like the day before we were leaving. I opened it up and I'm like, oh, it was just plain white. I mean, like somebody just sent me a strip of white material, It was good material, but it was just plain. And I said, you know what? It is what it is. This is what I am wearing to Bishop Talbert's memorial service. I will be forgiven, I am sure. And so we get there, and his daughter has laid out all of his stoles and said, he wants you to take these. And right there in the middle of the table was a very nice white stole. And I said, well, I know what I'm getting. And that's what I wore in the service. It was Bishop Talbert's white stole. Keep the circle going, because we left that service and drove an hour and a half down to where I grew up to visit my mom, my stepfather, and my siblings. Little did we know that'd be the last time we'd see her on this side of heaven. So even then, Bishop Talbert called us together to continue this circle. And at the last Reconciling Ministries Network convocation, there was this stole that Jan Lawrence brought back from Bishop Talbert's memorial service. And RMN, the Reconciling Ministries Network, consecrated the stole, presented it. I forget what the actual words were, but Pastor David presented it to Bishop Karen Oliveto as the first openly gay bishop elected in the United Methodist Church, with the charge that upon her retirement, she was to pass it on to the second. That would be me. And this is the stole. And I thought I'd probably have to wear it for a long, long time. But then, just a few months ago, you elected Bishop Kristen Stone King. Right. And so at Bishop Karen's retirement, I'm sitting there with Kristen, and Bishop Karen gives me the stole, and she, tells a story, and Bishop Kristen is standing there. There's a picture of us, like, in that moment where it happens. And so she tells her, he's supposed to pass it on to the next. Well, that would be you. And I said, how old are you, Kristen? Because I was trying to figure out how long, who's going to retire first. And so, was I wrong? I mean... So when I retire or when I'm ready, I'll pass it on to Bishop Stone King. You can start the clock again. So we journey along doing this thing called life. And occasionally we get these full circle moments that we are fully aware of, that we get to mark and we get to celebrate. Amen? So we just journey along. And Mark's gospel is indeed a journey. I mean, scholars believe it is to be the earliest of the Gospels that was written. We know that it's the shortest. It's a quick read, not an easy one, but it is a quick read. You could get it done over brunch if you hold back on the mimosas. I promise you can make it happen. But as you move through the Gospel of Mark, when you get up close to the passage that we read here from Mark chapter 10, a lot has happened just in the 2 chapters. A lot can happen in Mark because they're short chapters, and you just get the snippets, the highlights, the previews, and then you just have to move on to get on with what needs to happen. But if you go back as just a couple chapters to chapter 8, you can see that a lot is happening. Much like today, a lot is happening very quickly. It's almost hard to keep up with just because of how much is happening, how quickly things are moving around us. But if you go back to chapter 8, you'll start to see that there's the feeding of the 4,000 plus, we like to say. We have the Pharisees demanding signs as if what Jesus is doing is not sign enough that this is a bad boy, but they are demanding a sign. Jesus goes on to cure a blind man. I mean, I have a man that I wish Jesus would cure of blindness right now, but I can't name him. I'll just let you guess. But we also have Peter declaring to Jesus that thou art the Christ, and there's this great moment that happens. Jesus foretells of his death and his resurrection, not the first time, but the second time he tells them. There's the transfiguration where they go up on the mountain and they have this great experience, but they have to come down from the mountain. Jesus heals a boy who's been throwing himself in a fire, and the disciples are just confused as to why they couldn't bring about healing, and the parents are concerned and confused, but Jesus just goes in, does the healing work that Jesus wants to do, and then some people want to talk about divorce. In the midst of all this soul-saving work that's happening, in the midst of all this life-transforming work that needs to happen, in the midst of a society that has lost its way and it's in need of some love and maybe in need of what the children sang about, I don't know, some peace, somebody wants to talk about divorce. And I know y'all don't know nothing about that. We don't call it divorce, we call it disaffiliation. And Jesus blesses children. He has this encounter with the rich man. So the rich man finds out what's necessary. And then Jesus tells of his death and his resurrection, not for the first time, not for the second time, but for the third time. He says, listen, in the Message translation, he says, listen to me carefully. We're on our way up to Jerusalem. When we get there, the Son of Man will be betrayed to the religious leaders and scholars. You can always count on the religious leaders and scholars to do you in. But anyway, they will sentence him to death. Then they will hand him over to the Romans, who will mock and spit on him, give him the third degree, and kill him. After 3 days, he will rise again. Now, no one asked Zebedee's sons to be hotshots, big wheels, or top dog, or to be know-it-alls. They were asked to be disciples. They were asked to be followers of Jesus. And I know, if you're like me, you say yes to all manner of things without getting a clear understanding of what you're getting yourself into. But what if Jesus did say? What if Jesus was walking alongside the Galilee and said, come be great? You know what, Robert? Come be great. Christopher, come be great. Come be great. What if he did that? Well, what we know now is that would mean the same as come follow me. Or go 2 by 2. And by the way, I'm going to die in a little bit. And living this life will bring an end to yours too. That's what it would mean, the same thing. See, great is in question these days. Not because the Bible is unclear and not because Jesus was confused or confusing. See, we hear the word great all the time. We hear that word all the time, but do we really know what it means to be great? I mean, many of us were enthralled throughout the Summer Olympics. I know I was. Was I the only one? Just enthralled. I mean, great routine, great dive, great run, great handoff, great dunk, great pass, great symbolism during the opening ceremonies if you weren't an ultra-conservative who really didn't understand art and culture and all those kinds of things. I digress. Great use of Paris's landmarks in history. Great outfit. I mean, there were some great outfits, I just have to say. A great flag. I mean, the flags just always amaze me. But what else are they supposed to be? I mean, think about these athletes. What else are they supposed to be? Aren't they supposed to be great? I mean, they've sacrificed and prepared most of their lives to do the very thing that they are there to do. Great. They're great, right? I mean, and it's not a trick question. But we use great. We use it all over the place. We use all of, and I mean, let's think about. Okay, we move from the Olympics to the election cycle, and we can use great there. Great big old mess. Great chance we're in trouble. Great divide in this country. Great breakdown in communication. Great chance for common decency and some common sense. If only sense were common, amen. But great is used without much regard for what it means, particularly when we think about it in this biblical context. In Mark's gospel, Jesus uses greatness to talk about what it means to be a servant and what it means to be a servant as a disciple of Jesus Christ. And one way to think about this is, did any of y'all watch the old TV show Fame? Did y'all watch Fame? I know you're of the generation, so don't act brand new. Brand new. But Debbie Allen's character on there, she was a dance instructor, and she was one of my favorites. I mean, because she would just call a thing, and I just loved it. But in the opening theme song, they would cut away from the singing, and you'd see her sitting there, and she says, "You got big dreams? You want fame? Well, right here is where you start paying in sweat." That's almost what Jesus is saying here. You want to be great? Well, right here is how you start paying, in service. Amen? Oh, now. See, the sons of Zebedee didn't get it. All they saw was all this good stuff that Jesus was doing, and they wanted to be at his right and his left. Why? So people could see them. Why? So they could take some credit. Why? I don't know, but they asked to be at the right hand and the left hand. Why do you ask for the things you ask for? Why do you pursue the positions you pursue? Why do you hold the thoughts and positions that you hold? I don't know. But they ask. Without regard for anybody else, just the two of us, we're going to take care of me and mine. See, right there, you have a problem. We it wasn't, we just want to line up by height, or we want to line up by age, or we want to line, but I want to be at the right and my brother at the left. I'm going to take care of me and mine. Is that how Jesus had been leading? No. It wasn't a me and mine. It was a us and our. Amen? And Jesus says, it's not mine to give. Now, the undertone is there, even if it was, you got to be kidding me. That's my translation of it. You got to be kidding me. But there's this overuse of great and greatness in our vernacular, just as much as I think there's an underuse of what it means to serve in our experience. Because what Jesus lays out here is that for you to be great, you have to assume the least position. In order to be great, you have to be willing to serve all. That's what I like about the inclusive Bible and that translation of this text. It didn't say you have to be willing to serve those who think like you. It didn't say serve those who live in your type of neighborhood. It didn't say serve those who hold your same political and theological views or persuasions. It didn't say serve those who are in the same socioeconomic class as you. No, it says serve all. If you want to be great, you serve all. You don't seek notoriety and position for yourself. You seek sustainability and humanity for all. And the beauty of this is we find that in all kinds of places. We find servants and we find the spirit of servanthood in all kinds of places. I found it just a few weeks ago. I was down in Alabama, went down to take care of some family business, and while there, was blessed with the opportunity to attend my great-nephew's football game. He's a senior at my alma mater, and he plays on the football team where I played, and I got to see him play in a game on the field that I played on. You can tell me nothing. Until they were down 35-6 in the fourth quarter. And all of our family's gone, except for me and my sister. My sister had gone to the concession stand because she remembered that the nachos are half off in the fourth quarter. So she had gone to get some nachos, and I'm sitting there watching the game, and I see this man coming alongside. Oh, stop the clock too. I see this man coming alongside the front of the pews. Oh, I'm such a church nerd. Give me my mug. But he's coming along the bleachers, and I'm sitting up about 5 rows in the bleachers, not in the pews, in the bleachers. Well, it's South. It's Friday night. It's football. It's kind of churchy. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sitting there minding my own business because it's 35-6. This isn't going anywhere. And I'm sitting there and watching, and this man stops. I've seen him coming down just out of the periphery, and he's like greeting people, and I kind of wondered who is that, but he just kept going. And I noticed that he stopped, so I looked in his direction. When I did, he said, "Sir, what is your name?" And when I heard that voice, I didn't yell back. I got up and went down those five rows. And just because of the way it was designed, I was sort of leaning down as he extended his hand, and we touched each other's hand there. And he pulled me in, and I said, "My name is Cedric Bridgeforth." He says, "I know. And it's an honor to greet you, Bishop Bridgeforth." He says, "I've been watching you through the years. And I want to tell you, I'm so glad you got out of here and you made something of yourself. Not only did you make something of yourself, you're doing good in the world." And he says, "You didn't know I'm United Methodist, did you?" I said, "No, sir." He says, "Yeah, I'm United Methodist. My dad was Methodist, and I'm going to die a Methodist. And between here and there, I'm going to stay a part of this church and help to make it what you and I know that it can be." I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Owens." This was my high school principal from Danville High School in Danville, Alabama. There were a whopping 78 people in my graduating class. And I had not seen him since my high school graduation 10 years ago. Bishops too can be saved, all right? But I hadn't seen him since then. This was my high school principal, someone who's known me since age 11. Humbling himself to a former student. And what I saw in that man's eyes and what I heard in his voice was the heart of a servant, a disciple of Jesus Christ, living in a space and living out his faith in a way that I never could have imagined. So I share that in this context, beloved, so that as we live in the midst of all that we get, you can start the clock again. As we live in the midst of all that we live in the midst of, be careful about the blanket assumptions you make about people and places. Be careful about the blanket assumptions you make about people and places, because those blanket assumptions may get in the way of your willingness to serve all. Amen? I don't know where I am with this. I get to preach it again next time, next service. No, you don't want me to do that. Here's a good place. My hope is that in my lifetime and in yours, that I'll pass this on to Bishop Kristen Stone King, and she'll pass it on to whomever else comes along. And my hope is that in the not-so-distant future, that passing it around will be fun and collegial. That it will not be done as an act remembered as something that was indeed an act of defiance and disobedience just a few short months ago. That's the greatness I seek. That's the greatness I suspect is in you. That's the greatness I'm convinced Jesus had in mind. So, as Debbie Allen asked, you got big dreams? You want fame? You want to be at the right? You want to be at the left? Where right here is where you start earning it. In sweat. Sweat for voting rights. Sweat for living wages. Sweat for the immigrant. Sweat for trans rights. Sweat for health equity. Sweat for equal protection under the law. If we had a Hammond organ, it would just be wound up by now. Sweat for equal protection under the law. Sweat for the right to read whatever you want to read whenever you want to read it. Sweat for affordable and sustainable housing. Sweat for flattened organizations where all voices truly matter. Sweat for every woman's right to choose whatever she chooses to choose whenever she wants to choose it. Sweat for tolerance that becomes embrace. Sweat for disciples who vote with their neighbors and their neighborhood in mind. Sweat for clean air and clean water. Sweat for fruit and vegetables, fresh fruit and vegetables for all seniors and young people. Sweat for a church where people can truly stand up and be who God has called them to be every single day of the week. Sweat for those places and positions where you can sit and serve and truly make a difference for all, not just for yourself. Amen. Because that's what Jesus called the sons of Zebedee to, and that's what Jesus calls all of us to serve all. You want to be great? Well, right here's where you start paying, in sweat. Thank you, and God bless. I'll do the whole sermon next sermon.